Welcome, welcome. Today we have Locke Day 2, and coincidentally, this is also on Locke Book II of Locke's essay concerning human understanding. We're going to spend our time today on just a few pages to kind of try to get the core of Locke's notion of ideas, how he thinks about ideas. Remember that ideas play a central role in Locke's philosophy. He has that wide and ambiguous usage of the term, much like Descartes did as well. Okay, so this is Locke Book II of Ideas. In this section, Locke begins with a question. Where do we come by our ideas of such things as hardness, whiteness, sweetness, thinking, army, etc.? Okay, the mind begins as a blank slate, the tabula rasa, or as Locke sometimes will say, the white paper. Now, let's look at how he describes this. This is section 2, page 353 in our text. Let us suppose then the mind to be, as we say, white paper, void of all characters, without any ideas. How comes it to be furnished? Whence? It comes by that vast store both the busy and boundless fancy of man has painted on it, with an almost endless variety. Whence has it all the materials of reason and knowledge? To this answer, in one word, from experience. In all that our knowledge is founded, and from that it ultimately derives itself. Our observation employed either about external sensible objects, or about the internal operations of our minds, perceived and reflected on by ourselves, is that which supplies our understandings with all the materials of thinking. These two are the fountains of knowledge, from whence all the ideas we have, or can naturally have, do spring. Okay. All our ideas, in experience we have two fountains of knowledge from which all knowledge springs. Sensation, which is the source of most of our ideas, that's just our sense experience of the world, and reflection, combining those new ideas, recombining them into new things. All of our ideas, Locke says, can be accounted for in this way. You know what? I didn't put this quotation up on the slide, but we're going to look at this one right here. This go ahead and get the big book out here, and you can just pause this and you can go grab it. Page 353, number 5, where in that first part he talks about how these external objects, these all furnish us with the ideas. Then in the second paragraph there at the bottom of that page, this is his argument for this. These, when we have taken a full survey of them, and their several modes, combinations, and relations, we shall find to contain all our whole stock of ideas, and that we have nothing in our minds which did not come in one of these two ways, either through sense or reflection. Okay? Let anyone examine his own thoughts, here's our argument, and thoroughly search into his understanding. And then let him tell me whether all the original ideas he has there are any other than the objects of his senses or the operations of his mind considered as objects of his reflection, and however great a mass of knowledge he imagines to be lodged there, he will, upon taking a strict view, see that he does not have any idea in his mind but what one of those two have imprinted, though perhaps with infinite variety compounded and enlarged by the understanding, as we shall see hereafter. Okay? So, Locke is going to be relentless on this. He's going to offer us argument after argument, and we're going to kind of hit the highlights. I mean, we could spend 2 weeks on this section, on all these various arguments he gives, but we're going to hit some of the highlights. Okay? In section 6, he offers this argument from children. And this is true if you think about it, right? A child has fewer ideas to think on than an adult does. They don't have the experience yet, because they don't have the experience, they don't have the ideas. The store of ideas that we use to think are gathered gradually, and we have them by matters of degree. Now, Locke talks this way as if the ideas are discrete individual things that populate the mind. That may be kind of a weird idea, but that's his. Anyway, let's look at this quotation here from Locke, from number 6. Light and colors are busy at hand everywhere, when the eye is but open. Sounds and some tangible qualities fail not to solicit their proper senses and force an entrance to the mind. But yet I think it would be granted easily that if a child were kept in a place where he never saw any other but black and white till he were a man, he would have no more ideas of scarlet or green than he that from his childhood never tasted an oyster or a pineapple has of those particular relishes. Interesting combination there, oysters and pineapples. So you can't have an idea of something until you experience it. That's what that's all about, right? Now, in the next section, in number 7, he further emphasizes this idea that people have ideas by matters of degree. Brief quotation there. Men then come to be furnished with fewer or more simple ideas from without, according as objects they converse with afford greater or less variety, and from the operations of their minds within, according as they more or less reflect on them. So we have more or less ideas because of our experience and reflection. Some do more than others. Even among adults, some of us have more experiences than others. Thus, we have more ideas than others. Some of us have read more than others. Thus, we have more ideas than others. All the various ways that we can accumulate ideas. This is all a matter of degree. Okay? In section 9, he drops in a statement that would have been considered to be radical by many of his time. Let's just think about Descartes. Descartes has these innate ideas that are there from the get-go. So the mind kind of has something to think on from the beginning, right? So the soul is already there and could conceivably be there even from conception, right? But for Locke, in 9, he points out the soul begins to exist when a person begins to perceive, because that's when the person can have ideas. To perceive is to have ideas, and to have ideas is a mind. Here's the question. When do we begin to perceive? We'll leave that for the moment. Now, in section 10, he offers a longish discussion as to whether or not the soul always thinks. That is thinking the essence of the soul. Again, let's go back to Descartes. Descartes said that thought is the essential attribute of the mind. Now, it's not entirely clear whether he thinks that the mind always has to be thinking, although thought is the essence that seems to always be there. But we'll have to look into that. But Locke notes, but Locke says, like he's very honest. I mean, he says, I confess myself to have one of those dull souls that doth not perceive itself always to contemplate ideas, nor can conceive it any more necessary for the soul always to think than for the body always to move. The perception of ideas being, as I conceive to the soul, what motion is to the body, not its essence, but one of its operations. There you go. And therefore, though thinking is supposed to be ever so much the proper action of the soul, yet it is not necessary to suppose that it should always be thinking, always in action. And in this regard, at the end of that section, at the end of section 10, he there blatantly, explicitly endorses what we call the empiricist doctrine that, quote, a person cannot think at any time, waking or sleeping, without being sensible of it. You cannot think and not know you think. Okay, you cannot not be aware of it. That's what he's up to there. Okay? Note this also. Since it is impossible to think and not be aware of it, dreamless sleep is another argument against the claim that thinking is the essence of the soul. So check this out. This is in number 13 on 356. I like this. Impossible to convince those who sleep without dreaming that they think. Thus, methinks, every drowsy nod shakes their doctrine who teach the soul is always thinking. Those at least who do at any time sleep without dreaming can never be convinced that their thoughts are sometimes for 4 hours busy without their knowing of it. And if they are taken in the very act, waked in the middle of that sleeping contemplation, can give no matter of account of it. So, note that all of these arguments so far are related. Okay. Now, on that handout, excuse me, and that handout on Locke's extra quotations, it's on the Moodle page right there. It's on the Moodle page. Okay, so if you need to pause and pull that up, go right ahead. And number 15, actually it's right here. The important part of this is right here on the slide too. In section 15, Locke makes sort of a stinging point using our Creator, right? He says, nature never makes excellent things for mean or no uses, and it's hardly to be conceived that our infinitely wise Creator should make so admirable a faculty, that is the faculty of reason and thinking, as the power of thinking, that faculty which comes nearest to the excellency of his own incomprehensible being, to be so idle and uselessly employed at least a fourth of its time here, as to think constantly without remembering any of those thoughts, without doing any good to itself or others, or being any way useful to any other part of the creation. Thus, if we think while we're asleep and we don't remember it, it's such a waste of a beautiful and wonderful gift, the most divine-like thing we have in us. Let's do one more argument, and this is going to revisit that thing I alluded to just a little while ago, namely about the origin of the soul. Okay? The soul can't think until it has something to think with, namely ideas. Sections 21 and 22 are not in our text. They're on your handout. I'm going to go ahead and pull them up right here. Well, yes, there it was. There you go. Right, okay, there. 21. Here he talks about how the baby, in the womb, there's not thinking going on there. Certainly not if you were really reasoning at all. It's hard to imagine that a rational soul should think so much and not reason at all. And so there's about 4 or 5 lines of that. And he that will consider that infants newly come to the world spend the greatest part of their time in sleep, and are seldom awake, but when either hunger calls for the teat, or some pain, or some other violent impression on the body forces the mind to perceive and attend to it. He, I say, who considers this, will perhaps find reason to imagine that a fetus in the mother's womb differs not much from the state of a vegetable, but passes the greatest part of its time without perception or thought. That is, it takes a long time in development before we can even talk about perception or thought, right? Doing very little but sleep in place where it needs not seek for food, and surrounded with liquor, always equally soft and the same temper, where the eyes have no light and the ears so shut up and are not very susceptible to sounds. There's little or no variety. So, look, okay. So at this point, if you don't have thought, if you don't have reason, you don't have soul. Right? So in 22 then, the mind thinks in proportion to the matter it gets from experience to think about. So, gradually the child begins to furnish its mind with these ideas, but even from very early on, it has few, if any, even. Do you honestly want to say that a newborn baby has ideas? I don't know. The implications of this, just to say, are interesting, nonetheless. So in 23, which is in our text, he says, look, we can begin to have ideas when we can have sensation. So when we have sensation, we can begin to think when we have something to think on. Okay? Now, once we can think, the ideas that enter into our minds through the senses, these are passively received. The mind cannot alter or avoid them. Let's think about that for a second, okay? Passively received. When you walk into a room, you don't choose what you see. It's thrown upon you. It's presented to you in a way. You don't get to choose what you see in there. What you see in there is not by your choice. So these are passively received. Simple ideas. You can't alter them. You can't alter your image of blue. Now you can change the image, but then that's no longer blue, right? So our simple ideas, so our ideas we cannot alter, or nor can we avoid them. Okay? So this really, this wraps up that first part, all that stuff about the origin of ideas, where they came from, and all that. What we've got to do next is very important. Okay? And this is his notion of simple ideas. Okay? Actually, this is going to lead us into further distinctions. To understand this more clearly, we're going to consider Locke's distinction between simple and complex ideas. Complex ideas are compounded out of simple ideas. Okay? The mind actively constructs compound ideas, but it can only passively receive simple ones. And simple ideas form the materials out of which complex ideas are formed. The mind cannot invent or form any new simple ideas, nor can it destroy the ones that are there. Simple ideas are the smallest unit of experience, and they cannot be divided or analyzed into anything more basic or into different ideas, because these are true simples. They are truly basic. An example, on page 360, we're not going to look at that, just want to let you know where it is, that Locke uses. This is in section 1 of chapter 4, is solidity. Okay? If someone asks you, for example, what is solidity? Locke says, send him back to his senses. Let him put a football between his hands and try to put his hands together. Then he'll understand, right? So here's a book. Put your hands together. You can't put your hands together, right? Because why? Because that is solid. That's the only way you can get at what simple is by sending us back to the senses. Okay? That's what we mean by simple ideas. Complex ideas, on the other hand, these originate in 3 different ways. Okay? The mind can unite several simple ideas. I love this list, by the way. This list is right out of Locke. Beauty, gratitude, murder, an army, the universe. These are all complex ideas. These are ideas of modes. Now, how is beauty a complex idea? Well, it requires a thing with a particular combination of color that causes delight in the beholder. So it's not just one thing. Beauty is not just a thing, but beauty is of something. So it requires more than one thing. That's a complex idea. Gratitude, likewise. You have to have something to be gratified for. You have to have the one who's gratified. So it's a complex idea too. Okay? Second, the mind, murder too, by the way. Murder is not suicide. It takes a killer and a killed, right? So that's a complex idea too. Second way that these are united, these complex ideas originate. The mind can take 2 ideas and set them by one another so as to view them at once without uniting them into one. These are what Locke calls ideas of relation. And third, the mind can also separate one idea from all those that accompany it in its real existence. This is called abstraction, removing that idea from all the others. Okay? Now, Locke also divides simple ideas up into 4 kinds, but you know what? We're not going to carve all that up. You can look at chapter 3, page 359, or you can also check Thompson's discussion of them too. Okay? He has a discussion of those. Now, here we come to really sort of the central point, one of the big central points today. This is something for which Locke is very famous. That is primary and secondary qualities. Now, there was something like this in Descartes. He didn't name them this way. He didn't quite fill it out like Locke does, not explicit, but Locke is the one where we really get this laid out clearly. Okay? But in order to get this, we have to make this first very important distinction. Okay? Ideas are the immediate objects of perception, while qualities belong to eternal objects. Remember, we perceive only our own ideas. If we perceive it, it's not a quality. Okay? Qualities belong to objects. We don't perceive objects. We perceive our ideas of objects. Okay? Qualities belong to objects. We can perceive our ideas of qualities, but not qualities themselves. I hope that's clear. Okay? Let's look at Locke's initial description of this. On page 363. Whatsoever the mind perceives in itself, or is the immediate object of perception, thought, or understanding, that I call idea. And the power to produce any idea in our mind, I call quality of the subject wherein that power is. Thus, a snowball having the power to produce in us the ideas of white, cold, and round, the power to produce those ideas in us as they are in the snowball, I call qualities. And as there are sensations or perception or understanding, I call them ideas. Which ideas, if I speak of sometimes as in the things themselves, are to be understood to mean those qualities as in the objects which produce them in us. Qualities cause ideas in us. We perceive only our ideas. Qualities all cause ideas in us. Okay? Now, with that preliminary being done, the distinction between primary and secondary qualities has two parts. First is the notion that primary qualities are the intrinsic properties of material things. Secondary qualities are not, but they are the power of objects to produce certain ideas within us merely. Okay? So, we're going to look at sections 9 and 10 on 363. At least parts of that. In 9, primary and secondary qualities, so the 9 discusses primary qualities, and there he points out that these are intrinsic in them, right? That it includes things like, if you take a grain of wheat, divide it into 2 parts, each part still has solidity, extension, figure, mobility. Divided again, it still retains the same qualities. Though not the same amount, that's not the point, but it still has those qualities, right? These he calls original or primary qualities, and these are solidity, extension, figure, motion or rest, and number. Things have that regardless. Those are the intrinsic qualities of things. Okay? Secondly, such qualities, so secondary qualities are those that produce in us ideas of color, sounds, tastes, etc. These are secondary qualities, but they depend for their existence on the primary qualities. So the real foundation of secondary qualities is the primary qualities. Without primary qualities, we would not have secondary qualities. Okay? The second part of this thesis, the resemblance thesis. Briefly, number 15. Ideas of primary qualities are resemblances, of secondary are not. Okay. What he's saying here is that our ideas of primary qualities resemble the qualities themselves. Something's shape, something's place, something's size, something's motion. Those look like the thing in itself. Even though we perceive as our own ideas, our ideas of primary qualities resemble the qualities themselves. Okay? Ideas of secondary qualities do not, because these are merely powers that are inherent in primary qualities to produce certain kinds of ideas within us, namely those ideas of the 5 senses. Okay? Now, I'm going to offer up an argument for the distinction. This isn't directly Locke's argument, but it does depend on Locke's ideas. In fact, it is Lockean in nature. Okay? Let's talk about one of the things that might have motivated someone to make this kind of distinction. Let's start with what we might call basic common sense, a view that I like to call direct realism. Direct realism says two things. Things we perceive continue to exist even when we don't perceive them. Okay? That's fine. When you close the door in the refrigerator, the beer that you just put in there is still there. Okay? 2, things we perceive has exactly the qualities they appear to have. Now, 1 is probably okay, but 2 has problems. Okay? If I have a 10-gallon aquarium here on my desk, and if the camera were wide enough to show you this, and full of water, and I stuck a stick in it, the stick appears bent. Okay? Now, but it isn't bent. We know that. So, that stick does not have exactly the quality it appears to have. Okay? Let's think about color. Snow, for example. I'm assuming that most of you have seen it snow. Snow during the daytime is brilliantly bright white. At night, it's kind of bluish. What's the real color? Well, we think it's the daytime, but that seems arbitrary, right? So in other words, you can change the color without a change in the object itself by just changing the conditions that surround it. Okay? I moved here from Austin, Texas a long time ago now. In Austin, there's this great swimming hole called Barton Springs. Barton Springs is 68 degrees year-round. In the 105-degree Austin summer, that water is really, really cold because, cold water from the tap is about 80 degrees. I don't know if you know that or not. But so imagine a lot colder than that. Was a group in Austin who liked to swim at Barton Springs in the wintertime when it's 35 degrees outside. Guess what? When it's 35 degrees outside, 68-degree water is pretty warm. Is it warm or is it cold? It depends on the perception. Okay? Or, if you stand on some railroad tracks and look down, you see them long, straight. They come together in the horizon. Go ahead and walk down there and find that point. You'll never find it. It looks like it does. In all of these cases, things do not have exactly the qualities they appear to have. Many things do not have exactly the qualities they appear to have. Okay? So, let's go back and look at color now. Color can appear differently under different circumstances. What if our sun, the only reason that colors appear the way they do to us is because of the particular spectrum that our sun puts out. What if our sun were a black light, for ultraviolet? You know what? We would think very differently about colors. But there would be no change in the object themselves, but there would be a change of color. Given this, can we really say that color is in the object when the color can appear differently without any change in the object itself? Snow appears white in the daytime but bluish at night. Which color is it? Locke would say, no one would say that the pain you feel from touching the fire is in the fire, but we do say that the warmth is in the fire. Guess what? This isn't consistent. Okay? The pain, the heat, the hot is just a ramped up warmth. Okay? Warmth is produced only when a sentient being comes close to the fire. Same thing with the pain, same thing with both of them. Same with color. Color consists in it being seen. Light waves are not color, they're the conditions for color, but they require a perceiver in order to say that that's the color I see. Okay? Locke Solutions, this dilemma of direct realism, he accepts the first one, but denies the second one. That is, he accepts that objects continue to exist even when we don't perceive them, but he denies that things have exactly those qualities they appear to have. What he has is representative realism. Physical objects in themselves are not the objects of perception. Rather, we perceive our own ideas. Okay? Further, objects in themselves, they have no color, no temperature, no taste, no smell, etc. But they do possess the power to produce such ideas in our minds via secondary qualities. And our ideas of primary qualities resemble the qualities themselves. Our ideas of primary qualities resemble the qualities themselves, or ideas of secondary qualities do not. Excuse that typo right there. I'm going to edit that out when I put this up on the Moodle. Okay, we will fix that. There's the correction. Our ideas of secondary qualities do not. Now, on the next couple of slides, we have Locke's argument about light and snow and all of that. You can consult this yourself. This is section 16 on 364. I've pretty much given you these arguments already. But I want to note them. You have them on this slide. You have them in your text. Okay? And then likewise, he offers another argument in 16 and 17. So take away the sensation of them. Let not the eyes see color, nor colors, nor ears hear the sounds. Let the palate not taste, or the nose smell, and all colors, tastes, odors, and sounds they are of such particular vanish and cease, and reduce their causes, i.e. bulk, figure, and motion of parts. By the way, in other words, the age-old question has been answered. A tree that falls in the forest makes no noise. Not if there's no one around to hear it. Without a tympanic membrane to receive those vibrations, that's not noise. That's merely the motion of primary qualities. So, there you go. Here is the summary of this whole part, this last part. Okay? This is on page 366. There's primary qualities up there: bulk, figure, member, situation, motion. These are in them, whether we perceive them or not. Okay? They're intrinsic. Second, the power that's in any body by reason of its insensible primary qualities to operate in order to cause these ideas of colors, sounds, smells, tastes, and so on. These are sensible qualities. These are secondary qualities. Okay? Thirdly, the power that's in a body by reason of particular constitution of its primary qualities to make such a change in the bulk, figure, motion of their body. So this is causal powers, right? These are usually called powers. The first of these are real, original primary qualities, and the second two are powers. Okay? So, there is Locke's distinction. Now, your assignment for this section is the following. Carefully articulate Locke's distinction between primary and secondary qualities. What are his arguments? Are they convincing? This really is the core of what we did today, of course, in addition to the origin of ideas, but this is one of Locke's most significant contributions to things. So I want you to work on this and write me a couple of pages on this, okay? And I will put up a Moodle Turn-It-In thing on the Moodle page, and also I will post this slideshow, okay? And I will see you for Lot 3 next week. Stay safe, y'all. Wash your hands.